Well, this episode just put me through the ringer. Yeah, I was not prepared to see the things that I saw in the Flash mid-season finale, but I will say, at first I thought, oh, okay, this episode seems pretty standard, but they have to definitely turn it up a notch somehow, like they always do, if this is going to be the mid-season finale. And boy almighty, did they find a way to do it. So, of course, this is going to be my review for the Flash mid-season finale. This is season 3, episode 9, titled The Present. And at first, I wondered, how are they going to I don't even remember the last time a Flash episode had so much going on all at once. But the thing that I really enjoyed about this episode is that it was able to take so many storylines and weave them together, and yet it didn't feel like and yet it didn't feel too squished. For me, it felt like each storyline had its right moment to shine, and yet, and though the fact that they were able to pull that off in, because most episodes on network TV are 42 minutes, the fact that they could pull it off in that length of time, it was, I was impressed as all hell. And yet again, I have to keep reminding myself, why am I always surprised when the Flash impresses me? And then I realized, wait a minute, no wonder I keep being surprised, because I always declared it's my number one favorite show of all time, and this episode just yet again proves why it is. So we'll talk about alright, so just like in every CW DC episode review, we will talk about the things I liked about this episode, the things I didn't like in this episode, and yeah. So what did I like about this episode? I really enjoyed seeing Jay Garrick again. It was nice to see him, and it was really nice to see Mark Hamill return as the Trickster. But didn't you notice something? When Barry went to Earth 3 to find, when Jay was fighting the Trickster, didn't Mark Hamill look just a tiny bit exactly like the Joker there? Like, that didn't even look like the Trickster. That just straight up looked like the Joker. But anyways, it was nice to finally see John, even if it was for a little moment. And, while I wish we could see like a longer, an episode more dedicated to the Trickster like we did before in the past, I'm just glad that, we got to see him at all, because, he's very busy with, Star Wars Episode 8, and if he will be in Episode 9, I don't know. And of course, he has his own show on Comic-Con HQ. I think it's called like Mark Hamill's Pop Culture Quest or something like that. But anyways, it was nice to see him. And it was just nice to see John Wesley Shipp as the Flash get to face off against the Mark Hamill as the Trickster again for the first time properly since the 90s TV show. So it was great. The other thing that I wanted to mention is, the other thing that I'm glad that finally broke through and we finally got resolved this time was, we finally got to see Joe and Iris back off of Wally. I think I mentioned this in my review for last week when I kept saying, hey, they have to cool off, because it's like, I understand Wally, Wally's Iris's brother, Joe's son, but I'm just glad that that Joe and HR had that talk where he just said, I'm really glad that, where he said, what I do is I help people fulfill their true potential, and if it's not with, I'm trying to remember, and if he, oh yeah, that's right. So he told Joe, if you won't help Wally find his true potential, he'll just start looking for it elsewhere. So I'm glad that they are finally we're finally going to get Kid Flash. And I really like how at the end of the episode we got to see him. Their Christmas present to him was finally the Kid Flash costume, and yes, looks like he will actually be called Kid Flash. And I like how when Wally was helping him, fight, well, not fight, but distracting him to save Barry from Savitar. I really like how Wally is fast enough that he too can see Savitar. That is a nice touch, and we got to see just a hint of the classic Wally West sense of humor there, because he was taunting Savitar like Wally West did in the Justice League cartoon, like he always does in the comics. So it's like, slowly but surely we are going to get the Wally West that we know and love in this show, and that makes me so happy. You have no idea. Okay, now if we want to talk about other scenes, now, before I get to Savitar, let's talk about Julian. So, once again, I'm so impressed with how this show is able to handle so many different storylines all in this one episode. We finally got closure for the Julian storyline, and so Julian has been blacking out. He doesn't know that he has been alchemy this whole time. But we did get his backstory, and if there was any part in this episode that I didn't like, I guess you could say it's Julian's backstory. It just feels really random, and it's like we didn't even get a hint that he was obsessed with wanting to find this stone, and that was only 4 months ago. You would have thought that this would be a bigger deal, that this would be affecting him. And I know he said that he wanted to travel to America to forget all that, but I would imagine it would take a toll, on his emotional well-being, trying to attempt to revive his sister, spending years spending all his future inheritance money, all for the purpose of finding this one stone. Or maybe the blackouts made him completely forget, and I guess Barry confronting him saying, do you know who Savitar is? Do you remember this report? That brought back his memories. But if there's any one part of the episode I didn't like, it was Julian's backstory or his origin. I just didn't... But overall, while I did not like Julian's backstory, I do like how he was used throughout the episode, how he kept denying it, and then at the very end, I just love how Barry just revealed himself to Julian, and then Julian just keeps saying, I knew it this whole time. But the real fuck shit is when he was remembering everything that happened, and when he was telling it to Barry. I really like the part when he says, I kept seeing my dead sister, and then you're starting to parallel, and you're starting to imagine, oh shit, this is what's going on with Cisco. So I guess, people with dead family members, a Savitar gets into their heads. Anyone with dead family members that comes to make him open the box. I guess that's how he works. I'm still not entirely too sure on that. But anyways, we have to talk about Savitar, because finally, for the longest time, I thought, damn, how does Barry defeat Savitar? How are they going to stop Savitar? And then it turns out, just close a box. And I can't be the only one thinking, why can't you can someone just put duct tape over the box? Isn't that surely has to be a much simpler solution to making sure it never gets open? Actually, screw that. Fuck the duct tape. Get Gorilla Tape, so it can surely never get open. I can't be the only one thinking that. But I guess throwing it in the Speed Force was... So I guess throwing it in the Speed Force was a nice idea, but goddamn, I was confused as all hell when... actually, we'll get into that later, but what I want to say is I never once felt afraid or intimidated by Savitar, because to me he just looked like he just looked like a rejected version of Megatron. So it's like, who the fuck cares about this guy? Whatever. But then when you got to see those fights of how he just beats the shit out of Barry and Jay like it's nothing, and how he, like, especially when he was beating up Jay and he just drags him through the Speed Force and just whips him and just throws him up and down all around everywhere like a fucking ragdoll. It is that's how it started to prove to me how much Savitar is someone you don't fuck around with. And but to me, that scene when they put that thing to connect the stone to Julian's brain or whatever to make him speak through him, the part when he says, "I know all of you because I hate you, Barry, because of what you did to me in the future," it kind of reminds me a bit of Reverse Flash. But the fact that he also already knows Joe and Iris and Caitlin and Cisco and HR and everyone, the fact that he knows all of them and he knows what happens to their future, and he says, "One shall fall." I'm trying fucking Transformers. One shall rise, one shall fall, blah, blah, blah. But anyways, besides the point, I like how he kept mentioning that he says, "One will betray you, one will fall," and, things like that. That's when I started to be afraid of him. It's like, oh, God. Damn. It's like, like, I just stood there speechless, like that's how I reacted to it, to him, to everything that when he was speaking through Julian. And so when they decided to throw the stone into the Speed Force, and then you see something exploded and it knocked Barry back, and all of a sudden you didn't know where he was. And then I didn't realize this at the time. I didn't know that he was in the future. But it's like my emotional levels went from 0 to 10 when Savitar killed Iris right then and there. It's like, wait, whoa, what the fuck is going on? It's like, because we didn't know. Like, is this current continuity going to be right here? Or no, not at all. It's like that was the future. And apparently it's the first time a speedster has been to the future, and it's just goddamn. I started getting choked up immediately and wanting to cry when we saw Iris die, because that was a bit much to handle after everything that Barry's went through with losing his parents, then all the stress of the Flashpoint things dealing with him, and having to deal with Caitlin and Cisco hating him, and then he's starting to return back to normal, and then on top of all that, he has to fucking watch Iris die. Just damn. And you can tell how badly it affected him when, he's trying so hard to pretend like everything's fine, like he didn't see what he just saw. But that moment when he saw Iris die in the future, and then now we know that's why the newspaper says Julie Greer instead of by Iris West Allen. It's like we understand now, and now we're wondering, so that message that future Barry sent in Legends of Tomorrow, is that the message that he sent to himself? Is that what he was talking about? Because of something I did, Savitar is fucking him up? Or was that Barry in the crossover? Was he specifically only talking about just Flashpoint? Because surely that Barry in 2056 had to know about Savitar in the future and him going back, right? But just goddamn, that scene alone, the way they ramp shit up, the episode for me went from an 8 to a 9, and maybe even a 9.5. And then especially at the end there, when you found out that Barry he holds on to Iris more tightly back in the present, and I love how Jade is trying to calm him down, saying you can prevent this, but you can tell some permanent emotional damage has been done to Barry. And so it's just even more interesting on how this is all going to work out in the future, because now I want to know, how is he going to deal with this, knowing he just saw this? Because clearly this isn't a thing that he's just going to forget about anytime soon. So it's going to be real interesting. But also, I can't be the only one when he thought one will betray you. That had to mean Caitlyn turning into Killer Frost full time, right? Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what it meant. But I thought that future was coming true early when at the West House, he took off Caitlyn took off the handcuffs and made it snow. And they're like, hey, they said to never take that off. But then I guess if it's just one cuff, maybe, I guess it's fine. Still don't know for sure. But I also really liked seeing Joe and Cecile. Wait, who? It was Cecile? Lucille, I forget the DA's name, but I like when Joe and her kissed and Iris just said, finally. It's funny. Anyways, but I like how they were, this whole time they were trying to compare which grandma's eggnog was better. It's just, it's the, you need the light moments after all the darkness that just happened. But anyways, so I'm and we got to see that now Barry finally has Iris. So her and Iris are now going to be living together in a house. So it's like the relationship is ramping up and, taking it that much closer to when the Flash is in his prime in the comics, when him and Iris are married and, and they're slightly a bit older, sort of, kind of reminding me of Batman in his prime or, Superman in his prime. And I assume at the time in the comics when Superman and Lois are married, or even when Oliver and Laurel are married in the comics, reminds me of that. But anyways, I'm just wondering, because him going to the future, that has to have a future consequence, and I can't wait to see how that will all pan out. So anyways, that was my thoughts on tonight's episode of The Flash, and this was a 9.5. This always happens in The Flash every time I watch The Flash. The episode, and whenever I think that an episode is going to be just okay or average, which for The Flash is already pretty damn good. But then something happens midway through that just ramps it up to a 9 or higher. I love it when that happens, and this episode definitely happened in the mid-season finale. So anyways, thank you for watching, and I'm Mr. Gaming Guitarist. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe so you don't miss out on future episodes from me. And you can also subscribe to me. You can also support my channel on Patreon. I'd appreciate it. And you can see me on the N4G TV podcast, on the N4G TV YouTube channel. Links to that will all be in the description below. And I will see you for tomorrow's mid-season finale of Arrow. See you then. Bye.